Thanks again for hopping on, Sammy, to another episode of Untapped Stories. So before we get into your page and how you grew it and the parenting aspect, maybe if you could share for the audience, what was your own athletic and sports background like growing up, and how did that shape really the sports parent you became?
Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I played sports my whole life. I was the only girl in my family, so I grew up around all boys, and we didn't have the resources that we have today for these kids to learn and grow and develop. I mean, I played AAU basketball, but for the most part, I was playing in the street just with all the guys, and that's where I had my grit instilled inside of me to just become better and do better. I would say before it was a thing, I used to go to boys basketball camps, and I was the only girl there, and I was just grinding and hustling, and Cardinal Doherty was nice enough to let me do that. But it developed me into the parent that I am today because I just became so passionate about the game, and I just wanted that for my kids.
That's awesome. I wanted to go into like how you kind of came up with the idea of having this Instagram account that gives great advice to parents. Could you go through like that process, how you started it, and you have such an engaged following, how you got that going? Because you give a lot of great advice, particularly for sports parents.
You guys, it was a complete accident. Um, Prior to changing the handle over to, for those that aren't familiar with Instagram, prior to changing the account name over to Raising Athletes, it was just my name. My son came home from a baseball game. I have multi-sport athletes. We can get into that. But he grabbed the trim on the door with his fingertips, and I think he was like 10. And he started to do pull-ups, and I just video recorded it, and it went absolutely viral. And what I spoke about on that reel is kind of the foundation of how this began. He asked for a day off, right? And we live in an environment and a society where the generation hears kids asking for off, and all of a sudden they're soft, right? These kids are soft. They don't know work ethic, this, that, and the other thing. And I see it as the complete opposite. If a child tells you that they need a day off, listen to them, because these kids are ran, right? And so I stayed out of the comments, but just reading through the commentary, we have one side and the next. And a lot of parents were like, wow, this is fantastic. Some kids jumped in that were young, and they would say, I wish my parents did this for me. I wish I just had a day off, you know? And so that's really kind of how it exploded. And I don't speak from here, and I don't speak from the screen. I speak from here, and I think that that's so important.
That's awesome. Actually, we were going to bring it up since you touched on it. One of our favorite topics is the development of multi-sport athletes and whether parents should let their kids play every sport under the sun, or if specializing in one really early. And we've heard both sides from more people than you can imagine. But as a sounds like dedicated sports parent, what's your take on kids playing multiple sports and doing all the things when they're young?
Sure. I have to preface the comment that I will make from here and forward is that I'm not trained in anything, right? I'm just a mom. I played sports myself, and we were talking pre-show. My brother was a D3 basketball coach, and there are sides to that are tough, right? But what I will say is that, raising kids is a difficult thing, and trying to balance. I see it in 4 pillars: work, life, the youth, and then the schedules is difficult. But putting one kid inside of a box and telling them this is your sport, this is what you're going to do, there's so many different facets to that can be detrimental to the kid's development, both mentally and physically. So again, I'm not a doctor. I don't roll that way, but I just think that for the development of the athlete, like my kids are hyper focused in ice hockey. Okay, I told you I was a basketball player. You show up with sneakers. This is the complete opposite side of that.
Gear.
And it's a lot of gear and a lot of smell, but to have them focus just on hockey is, just not for us. I think that they play baseball too. They also play basketball in the driveway. We're neighbors with Colin Gillespie, which is pretty cool. He's an athlete, right? So they see him come home every once in a while, and they're trying to drain threes while he's driving by. And I just think that it makes a more well-rounded kid. I mean, hockey's so fast-paced. It's so mental. It's so physical. And baseball's a little bit more laid back. I think it's so important for these kids to be able to have different friends, right? Different mindsets, different seasons, and just I don't know. What are your guys' takes on it? I mean, you've been athletes.
Yeah, I think Matt's probably got his own thoughts. I have 2 boys that are almost 2 under 2, I would love for them to play as many sports as they want for as long as they can, especially like even into high school. I think back in the day it was a big thing for us to only do one sport. But yeah, I've seen so many people make it far and they've played multiple sports, had those experiences. I think it's a plus. But if a kid loves one sport, you can always have them be the primary sport, but then maybe do the other ones just for fun or to keep up with other athletic abilities. But yeah, I lean towards multi-sport. I don't know about Matt though.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the end of the day, I mean, I'm the only one here that doesn't have kids yet, but I can know from what worked for me when I was younger. I played baseball, football, basketball were my three main sports growing up. And then I started eliminating them as I got older as to which ones I was good at, what gave me the best chance to play in college. But I think just like coordination, in different sports helped me a lot too. So I know we've done a lot of these podcasts, but we had someone who came on who was a basketball player and also played soccer growing up. And that was something that kind of helped with footwork and those type of things. So, and then even with just injury, I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I just think specializing early on probably increases the likelihood of maybe having injuries, doing the same thing over and over again. So I'm totally for multiple sports, but also knowing that if the kid loves one sport and that's what they want to do, I think that should probably be up to them.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into the time period right now with our oldest son. He's 13, so baseball kind of caps out. They play for Cal Ripken, that league. It caps out, so he can't play anymore. But what I noticed with playing baseball and hockey is that hockey's so fast-paced, baseball's so slow. So he leaned into hockey more because he was looking for those endorphins, right? It was so quick, but he learned, just through baseball how to be patient and the longevity of the game. And there's just so many different things that are valuable in playing multiple sports.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely. One of the things I wanted to jump into too is being a parent. I mean, I see this, and I'm sure you've seen at games where parents are getting a little bit too intense on the sidelines, a little too heated. It's got to be difficult because you're rooting for your son or daughter to compete, but how do you manage your own emotions and expectations during games and competitions?
It's really hard. When you start a season, everybody's winning. Everybody's excited. Everyone's happy. The other thing about youth sports is that a lot of parents drink before the games and things like that, and it escalates some of the environment that you're in. And, I'm all for adults doing whatever they would like to do, right? But you watch how emotions can get escalated. So, I try to just have coffee, sit back, and really experience my child doing what he loves or what they love, because the stands, especially in hockey, they get insane. And so I try to keep my parenting at the root of everything. I mean, there was a time out in Westchester, we were at Iceline, and I heard a group of dads talking really horrible about my 10-year-old kid, right? And when you hear your last name and you hear something that affects that little child, it's hard. It's hard to just walk away. But you have to really turn it off, and self-control is so important these days. I mean, you guys, you're on Instagram, you watch how people go viral. Do you want that to be what your kid sees when they open up their For You page? That's your parent, right? And so I try to tell my kids, you can always step away and stand by yourself. And my husband and I usually stand together when we're watching the game, and we know when to walk away. Our son's a defenseman, the other one's a forward, so it's a little different when you have a defensive player because it's hard. So we know when to walk away and things like that. But at the root of everything when it comes to managing emotions, I always keep my child at the center. Is this something that I want for them through me? Because if they want to turn this into a collegiate, endeavor, then everything on the internet today is reproducible. And I just don't want to ruin that for them. So I try to keep, that at my core.
That's really smart. I think a lot of parents don't think like that. They get so caught up in like the emotions of the game. But if you think about the longevity of them playing. Exactly.
Yeah, they're invested. It's not cheap anymore to play sports. I wish it was more affordable. I'm sure there's so much talent in areas that just can't do what we are psychotic enough to do. but it's a shame, but you're right. You're absolutely right.
How, kind of piggybacking off that, Sammy, how do you help your kids when it comes to like overcoming tough obstacles, or if they're going through a tough time, they're not getting a lot of minutes maybe, like how do you sit down and talk to them and help them become a better person for that? Because it happens to every athlete no matter what stage you're at. I'm sure it's happened to your kids. So how as a parent do you help them get through those tough times?
It has. So what I try to do as the foundation of the way that I'm raising my kids, I mean, you know that Joel Embiid is the process, right? I tell our firstborn that he's the experiment. We've never done this before. So we call him, we say like, dude, you're the experiment. But what I try to do is lead from the standpoint of you're going to be a leader one day. You're going to be extremely successful. You're going to be a CEO, or you're going to be an entrepreneur. You're going to be a physician, and you're going to have a team. I mean, I do this in our own house with housework, right? Like, I don't say go do the dishes because you have to. I pay for your sports, go do the dishes. I say we're a team, and if we don't work together here, we're not going to be successful. We need to get out of this house, right? So the way that I lead them through tough times is, listen, like, this is the real world. You know, you're in the opportunity to miss that puck. You were in the opportunity to turn the puck over because you were the first back to the puck. Like, how fortunate that you have that grind inside of you. You have that hustle to be the one there to make that mistake, right? And you cannot compare yourself to anyone else. Like, how is Cade Kilgallen going to be better than Cade Kilgallen was the last game? Like, focus on yourself, because if you listen to 80% of the noise, you might as well just hang it up, because it's not going to ever get easier, you know? And things are documented for these kids these days. He had a fantastic turnover last year that went viral. And you know what? How lucky are you that the world's watching you turn that puck over? How lucky? You know, you just kind of have to flip that script.
I like that.
That's a really good point, too, on perspective. You touched on it a bit about just lessons that can be learned through youth sports. And we have a lot of young athletes that want to play in college. I hope it works out for all of them, but not for everyone. It's not going to, whether they're not good enough or injuries and other obstacles. But outside of the game, is there an important lesson that your kids have already learned from sports that applies outside of the game?
You know, I have received feedback from their school that, you know, they go to a private school. There's a heavy Ukrainian population after everything that had happened in our world. A lot of children came over from Ukraine. The principal had sent me a message and said, I just want to let you know, this is my second son, you know, Brendan has gone over to these kids in the middle of playing football, and he's not a football player, right? They're just playing in the schoolyard. And he has stopped the game to say, you know, hold on 1 second. And he's asked a kid, you know, come here. And he's like, I don't know how to play. And he's incorporated those kids, right? Because I try really hard. Now, my kids are not perfect. They are guilty before they are innocent, right? So they are not by any means perfect. But I try to teach them to look for that kid. Look for the kid that's watching you, because you have been granted so many opportunities to play on these teams and to go on these trips, experiences, and do these things, to see the world playing the sport that you love at the age that you're at. That if you see a kid that's watching you, let's not let that build your ego. Let's help build his confidence, right? And so I think that that's probably my favorite thing about sports outside of this, is that, you know, we don't leave anybody behind in general.
That's a really cool team aspect. I think a lot of kids, especially nowadays with social media, they get so invested in themselves. They want to see themselves shine, but you really got to look back and help others that probably don't have those same opportunities. So
right.
That's cool that your kids are recognized for that. I think one thing I wanted to bring up, and I know it's another hot topic, but it's fun to debate, honestly, for youth sports. What are your thoughts on full-on travel teams versus like local rec teams? And is there maybe any middle ground that parents should be aware of that they can find if they don't want to do those like California, Florida, Texas tournaments, or is it really just, you know, one or the other at this point?
So this is a fantastic question, because we were all in since COVID time. There was a rink that completely closed down. We found a rink that was going full force, and I had a 10-year-old that played 96 games in 2020, right? And we were traveling the world.
Jeez.
And I think that's where we got hooked. I don't think that's necessary. And, you know, with my first, the experiment, we're learning a lot. But there's a lot of talent in people that, listen, at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for your family. You have to do what you can afford. And we've stretched ourselves to the point where there's contention in the house because of finances, because of sports. And I'm not proud of that at all. But we are now seeing the development, and we love that for our kids. Would I do it again? Probably. But there is talent that parents just choose not to do it, and that cannot be forgotten. We were getting rid of some of our equipment a couple weeks ago because our children have outgrown it, and I put it on one of those, social sites for hockey, and a dad and the son came and picked it up, and he was like, "Oh, your son plays for whoever the team is?" And I said, "He does." And he said, "Did he go to Quebec?" And I said, "He did." And he's like, "Oh man, Dad, see?" And I looked at him and I said, "You listen to me. None of that matters. Social media does not matter. Do not follow those highlight reels, because again, it goes back to, if you're getting better than you every single day, your time will come." And he's like, "Well, I just started playing baseball too." I said, "Good for you." I said, "And continue to do that, because, rec leagues, it's challenging." We played baseball in a rec league, loved the coach, loved the team, but they were only cycling through 4 teams the whole season because there wasn't enough children to field teams. So that's where you can make that decision. We went and played a little bit more of a robust schedule because we wanted our kid to be dynamic.
Yeah.
But they still play CYO. They still play middle school, even though they're playing at this, level where it's intense, because they need to have fun. And I think that those are the games where they learn to be creative.
Yeah.
Those are the games where they learn to just shoot the stuff and have a good time. So I don't know. I mean, it's really up to the family. I just wouldn't jeopardize your sanity for anything.
I think it's a message we keep hearing over and over from parents, is that there's so many options, but you have to do what's right for your family.
Now that you've been through it, are there any tips or advice you'd give to a new parent who's just starting off traveling to these different games?
If you have one child, just stop now. Just, if you want it for more than one child, just stop now. I'm kidding. So I think when it comes to travel, no, I mean, you're all in or you're not. I don't have any other advice. It's nice when you have 2 kids that play and a tournament pops up on the same weekend. My husband threw me a virtual high five yesterday over a text message when the schedule came out and we're going to be in Massachusetts with the whole family at once. It doesn't happen. But I think for parents that travel, just make sure your kid is the one that loves this. I think that that's probably my best advice. Make sure your child is having fun. If your child is sulking after every game and sitting by themselves in a hotel lobby, and you're going to get in the car and rip them a new one on the way home about how much you spent for that hotel room or how much that tournament cost you, then just don't do it. Oftentimes parents ruin the experience for kids, and I watch it firsthand, and it breaks my heart as a mom, because I love these kids. We're fortunate enough that we're a part of teams that are fantastic. But you see it in the rink and you hear it in the parking lot. And if you're going to yell at your child for the experience that you signed off on, then just don't. Leave your ego in whatever state that you live in, and then go travel and just enjoy it, because it's a family experience too. It's all about perspective.
Do you, and a couple parents have said yes and no, and I guess there's a million ways to answer, but do you ever bring up the financial aspect to your kids about these tournaments, or is it really just they know that mom and dad will take care of it, I'm here to have fun? Like, have you broached that subject with them as costs have risen?
We have, because, in certain scenarios, there's like that sulking that isn't from parent induced, right? It's from a turnover. It's from, and we take more of an approach of, if not really like financial, but if you want to play at this level, you cannot disappear for your team. So we try to just keep it level based instead of financial based.
Okay.
And I think that resonates with them. But I will tell you that as time has progressed, especially with our 13-year-old, like, I'm so proud to say that more and more, like, he'll say at the end of a tournament, "Thank you so much for all you did to bring us here." He's starting to recognize that, because I work full time. I work in oncology. I work from home. I'm not just raising athletes, right? That's just my hobby. But he sees I hustle. He sees how hard I work and my work ethic, and I expect the same from them. that we're putting. I would never ask my kids to do something that I would never do myself. And so I think watching him turn around and appreciate these things is worth its gift in gold.
That's great. One of the things I had was now that you said he's 13 now, your one son. Yeah. So he's getting to that age where he's starting to do more on his own. Have you had? And I ask this because we've talked a lot about good things. There's a lot of great coaches. I don't know what your experience has been or what your son's experience has been with certain coaches, but when or if you've ever had an issue with a coach, how are you kind of teaching your kids how to handle those situations?
So I'm not the best one for this question because Pat and I don't broach that coach space. I think because we both played sports, our coach is coach. When we sign that, we'll say contract, that's what they call it, but they're kids. But like when we sign up for a team, we are handing over that responsibility to that coach, right? That's his space, and we have given the okay for him to coach or her to coach the way that they want to. So I think that with coaching, if we notice that something's not a fit for our kid or there's a lot of turnover, we've pivoted and changed organizations. That's the other thing that I would love to touch on eventually. But we don't broach coaches, and if the kids don't like something that a coach does or a decision that a coach has made, my kid went from playing on the power play, now he doesn't because he switched organizations. Well, you need to earn that spot. You need to work harder. You need to have that conversation with your coach and say, hey, coach, can you explain to me how I can get better, or what are you looking for in those scenarios? We do not approach coaches, and I think that's one thing every coach will tell you that our kids have ever played for. It's not our job. Our job's to parent.
Yeah, I love that, in particular because a lot of these coaches are putting a lot of time and effort in, and they may be parents too.
And they have work, and they go to work all day, and I know what it's like to work all day. And then they're parents, and maybe also because my brother was a coach, right, at the collegiate level, and I watch, things that he goes through, and his wife sits on the other side of the team's bench and this, that, and the other thing because of the commentary. People are brutal, and I get it. You're investing a lot of time, but you have to remember at your core that you signed up for this and for that coach because you believed in them. So let's not get lost in wins and losses, and watch your child's growth from the start and finish. And if you don't like something, you can always pivot.
I think a really important part of that too, Sam, is that there's kind of two types of teams nowadays. Yours sounds like you're talking about the travel team because you do pick your team and you do pick the coach. Sometimes parents for a rec league or maybe a CYO team, they don't really get to pick the coach, but a lot of times those types of people are just volunteers anyway. Like not rec, but travel and higher level teams, there might be some sort of financial aspect, so it's a whole different ball game. But in those
You're
teams, what
right.
you're getting into, so it is on you as the parent. For the rec team, sometimes it's like you get what you get, but the kids are really there to have fun. So it's a different mentality, I think. You're not like...
Yeah, I mean, I think in that scenario, like you have to parent a little harder, right? I'm not going to say coach your kid because I'm not a proponent of coaching kids unless, you have that experience. But you're absolutely correct. I don't really have any advice for that.
Maybe one of my last questions too, Sam. You did mention it, and I had the thought. What is the process of switching teams nowadays? Because it seems like kids get super locked into friend groups. They have a travel team they love. Maybe they're not playing a lot, or again, the coach isn't the right fit. How do you navigate? It's really like even transferring schools, but how do you navigate switching a kid's entire team set to a completely different organization when they're that young?
Yeah. So we have good experience with this. So I would love to break the stigma around staying with the team. I would love to do that for the sake of the child, because when you're at an organization, I stay friends with everyone at a high level, at least, right? I love running into old families and things like that, and it's hard for the kid. But, there's turnover, and so you pivot for coaching, right? Or you pivot to go to a different organization because perhaps they need a position that your child can fill that works better for you. And then we pivoted again after that because there was an opportunity for our son. And it is really hard, and I think it's hard when you leave those relationships because you're seen as a goal chaser or ridiculous or whatever someone feels. But I know that anybody's feeling about a perspective comes from their experiences, because it is hard. There's times where people won't talk to you and they will cut you off. And as long as everyone's still happy to see my child and they don't take it out on my child, you got to kind of just like brush that stuff off. But at the end of the day, coaching is so important, and changing teams for the right reasons is okay. You can't just say like to the world, I'm going to do whatever I want. If you're doing it from a good place and you're helping your child grow and there's a reason behind it that works for your family, then you kind of have to tune out what everybody else is feeling or saying. And for the child, it's not easy either, but you just tell them, this is going to be life. You're going to have different, relationships might not work out, friendships might not work out, jobs might not work out. And that doesn't mean that you have to hate each other. You're not now enemies, but let's just pivot. You can still stay in touch, but you got to learn how to be dynamic.
I know Matt's probably got one final question, but I got to jump in there. Is there really that big of a, because I only have 2 kids under 2, is there really that big of a, like a stigma or an issue with parents when kids do switch teams? Do parents really hold a grudge against other parents or kids for leaving? I guess if the kid's that good, they might, but.
Yes, and I think that sometimes it comes from a place of disappointment, because when you have a child that it affects the team dynamic in a positive way, it hurts. And it hurts the kids because they look forward to that. So you're indirectly hurting their child, right? Those kids are sad that their friend's leaving. I think it's up to us as parents to keep those relationships going. It's hard, and coaches take it personally, especially when the child is someone that's coachable and likable and a good player, a good person, and comes from, humbly, I'll say, a good family. I mean, we're probably easy to deal with. We don't talk to the coaches, right? But it's just so important to be transparent and honest up front. Gene, just tell them, like, this is why I'm doing this. Not that you have to explain yourself, but yeah, it's a challenge.
The last question I had, and I wanted to end it on a positive note, we went through a lot of some of the obstacles of being a sports parent, but could you go through maybe what's your greatest joy in being a sports mom?
That's a good one. I think I love watching the growth of my kids as people. I love watching, little kids look up at them and smile when they're walking by. I love watching my son, look at a younger player and give them a fist pump when they're waiting for them coming by the locker room. I love, being their parent. I love watching the family dynamics on the side. I truly have always loved every child on all of my kids' teams. Kids don't get to pick their parents, right? They just don't. And so I genuinely love the nature of sports. I think I'm so passionate about watching the kids because I've been there. And I just want them to grow as people and just learn that they're bigger than the sport. They're bigger than life. I'm lucky that I've been in big moments with them and for them, and I get to watch them. But all in all, at the end of the day, I think I love the camaraderie, and I think they're going to be pretty decent people based upon those that they interact with.
That's great.
That's really cool. I think a lot of parents, if they had that mentality going into it, no matter what happens, like high school athlete, college athlete, they'd be a lot better off for it, because sports really can teach you, we all know, we're all athletes, a lot about life, but when you get so lost in like the how good is my kid competition, like it's, I don't know, kind of loses the purpose of kids having fun and playing sports. So
yeah,
sounds like you have a really good perspective.
Yep.
Well, thank you for hopping on, Sammy. This is honestly a ton of fun. I think our audience will love this because there's a lot of good points in there about like what you can do as a sports parent, switching teams, the classic youth sport or rec sports versus travel 1-0 we got to. So thanks again for hopping on and sharing your thoughts with us.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me. I mean, I don't show my face because I just don't, people like, I don't know. I don't ever want to come off as knowing more than anybody else because I don't. This is my first go around. Right? I told you, my kids are my experiment. God bless them, because I don't even know how I was given 3, but thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
This has been great.
Thank you so much, Sammy. I appreciate it. And like I said,
it's great to connect.
We always learn, like we're learning, every sports parent has a different perspective. So this has been great just to talk and learn more. And, our audience, I'm sure it's going to help other parents. So it's been great.
Yeah.